Stew with JT Brew. I'm your host, Justin Taylor, here on the Dynasty Pros Football Channel. Today, I have with me a special guest, Lonte from ESPN Radio here in Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, as we are going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals on today's show. Make sure to check us out here on YouTube channel, also be on Spotify and Apple. In the Stew.
You up on trades and why you move, you ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing, racking up points, makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release, we started with the mock draft and now we making a mockery of the leaderboard. Quite obviously not a scrub, so start an institute, make evaluations like the commissioner do. It's to the point your wife make you watch in a different room. Update your roster and pick and choose when you get some news. Not much that we enjoy more than sifting through through new statistics to make it to our end zones through different routes. Universities, institutes, down to homies who click in groups. I introduce you to the Stew with JT Brew.
Hello, and thanks for joining us, everyone. Tonight, we are going to talk about the Arizona Cardinals. This is the second in our series about all the NFL teams where we're going to go through draft picks, sleepers, guys we like, and just kind of the schedule and everything we're going to look for here with the Arizona Cardinals. Lon, introduce yourself, kind of tell everybody a little about you and why you are an Arizona Cardinals fan.
All right. Hey, Justin, thank you, first of all, for having me. It's not often that I'm asked to talk about the Arizona Cardinals with anyone, so this is pretty exciting. So I do a local sports radio show here in the Champaign-Urbana area. Done that for 13 years. Got out of college and did the TV thing for 10 years. And broadcasting just been something that I've always enjoyed. But when it comes to the Arizona Cardinals, grew up as big Cardinal baseball fans, big Blues fan, and big St. Louis Cardinal football fan. And, of course, in 1988, they moved out to Arizona when I was a senior in high school. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do next? Because if they aren't the Cardinals, who am I going to root for in the NFL? And I seriously, Justin, that worried me. I know you're a huge NFL fan. It would stink not having a team to root for. So I give Bidwell's not much credit through the years, but I give him credit for the idea that they kept the Cardinals name. And when that happened, I decided, you know what? I'm all in on the Arizona Cardinals. To prove it, I went to the 2009 Super Bowl down in Tampa when, of course, Santonio Holmes had his pinky toe in by that much. And I was at the game when the Cardinals lost that. And when Larry Fitzgerald scored with like 2:46 to play, I sat there in silence. I didn't even cheer. I just sat there in silence thinking, are we really going to win a Super Bowl? And, boy, they came close. Kurt Warner and that crew of Edger and James and Larry Fitzgerald and that whole crew almost won one. So I've always just stuck with the Cardinals, and I'm here for the long haul. I'm 52. I got nobody else to root for. Let's go. Let's go, Cardinals. Let's win some games.
And I always feel bad bringing that up to you as me being a Steelers fan and all.
I know.
Being against you, and that one is always a little bit of a toughie because, I mean, I was a Larry Fitzgerald guy. You know, the Kurt Warner story would have been perfect. I mean, that's the Santonio Holmes catch was just one of the best plays in Super Bowl history. But yeah, I did really feel for the Cardinals in that game because, again, I had no hatred for them as a Steelers fan. I mean, we had never really played them in anything, so so it wasn't like we were playing the Cowboys, and I'm like, no, screw the Cowboys, So I kind of felt bad for the Cardinals. So that one was rough, and I was like, as a Cardinals fan, I was like, oh man, that's just a brutal way to lose. So I know the feeling there.
You know what's funny is that nobody hates the Cardinals because there's no reason to hate us, right? You've beaten us our whole life. I mean, I've been to Lambeau, I've been to Indy, I've been to Tampa, I've been to out to Arizona, I've been to all these Pittsburgh, I went to the Steelers. I mean, I've been to all these places, and everybody's like, "Oh, that's cute. You're a Cardinal fan." They don't hate us because they know they're going to beat us. So everybody likes the Cardinals.
Well, we'll get into how we kind of think the Cardinal season's going to go here, but let's start with the positive. Let's go with the positive. Let's talk about the draft. Let's talk about the NFL draft here. So starting things off, the Cardinals, everybody, they were the team people are talking about. Number 3 pick, had Kyler Murray. Question was, do you go quarterback? Do you wait on Murray with the injury? Do you trade back and get as much as you can? They kind of got a little bit gypped by the Bears getting that number 1 pick early, and they kind of got stuck where I just don't think they can make a deal with anyone. The Colts just decided that they were like, we're staying pat. We don't care.
Yep.
So that was really the team I think they thought they were going to be able to get to sneak up one and get some extra picks, but it just didn't happen. So interesting enough, once the picks went down, we saw Bryce Young go number 1 to the Carolina Panthers. Right. C.J. Stroud, who was my favorite guy entering the draft, going number 2 to the Texans, which I was really surprised they took him, but I thought that was a good move by them. Then all of a sudden we come back to 3, and everybody's like, what is Arizona Cardinals going to do? They end up trading the pick, which is what was expected, but nobody expected who they traded the pick to. Traded to the Houston Texans, who came right back after number 2, get number 3, and took Will Anderson. As a Cardinals fan, what do you think about that? You hope to get as much as you can. I don't know if they got enough, but at least they only moved back 3 spots to 6 and picked up a couple extra picks.
Yeah, and it was interesting because when they moved back to 12, right, and then moved back up to 6. And, of course, knowing Kyler Murray coming into the season was going to be injured, I mean, there's nobody in the world that would expect the Arizona Cardinals to make the playoffs, especially with Kyler hurt. So when that happened, I mean, I like this Will Anderson. I think he's going to be one heck of a player in the NFL, and I think the Texans did a good job to get what they wanted on offense with Stroud, which I agree with you. I love that kid. And then getting Will Anderson, who could be one of those guys that could really lead a defense for a lot of years. But with Monty Ossenfort on his first ever try here with the Arizona Cardinals, and, I want to give Steve Keim a little credit as the former GM. I don't want to just dog him. I mean, he had a pretty good career in Arizona in terms of making deals and stuff. But boy, lately the drafts have just kind of dried up, and Keim, was giving all sorts of money away, and it's just there's big contracts that are going to weigh Arizona down now for a couple of years. But I loved what Monty Ossenfort did. He came in and he's like, you know what? I'm gonna deal. I'm gonna work some magic here. And the idea that he was able to move back to 6 and then get an offensive lineman, which who doesn't need offensive linemen, right? You as a Steelers fan understand that how important the offensive line is. That's why you guys are good every year almost, is that you always have that. So to be able to go back to 6 and pick Paris Johnson up, a kid that's a left tackle by trade. And obviously with DJ Humphries, now we've got a guy for the next couple of years that can play that. So now, you can move maybe Paris Johnson to a different spot until he's ready to take over that left tackle. But to do that and then also grab a first-round pick of the Texans next year, I mean, that's huge. And let's be honest, I mean, Houston helped themselves, but you're looking at a rookie quarterback if they start him. You're looking at Will Anderson, who's a rookie on defense. That takes some time to adjust, even though it's easier on that to just get to the quarterback. But you're looking right now at the Texans not being very good next year and the Arizona Cardinals being really bad next year. You may have the 1 and 2 pick next season. And I mean, that got me excited because I hate to say this as a Cardinals fan. I love my Birds, but there is no reason for them to win a game this season. I mean, get that number 1 pick, hope that Houston doesn't win that much, and you could have 2 picks in the top 5 and turn this around and start going a different direction. So I love that Ossenfort was able to do that. He was able to pick up an extra 3rd rounder next year as well. So I loved what he did. I think it was an A+ for him in his first draft. I loved it.
Yeah, I was a little surprised they came back to 6 from 12 to get Paris Johnson. But I mean, if it's me and I've got C.J. Stroud, I want the guy that was protecting C.J. Stroud all of college. And Paris Johnson was the number 1 guy on pretty much everyone's board anyway.
Right.
So I love the combo, get my left tackle and my QB right off the bat. Like you said, not only did you get a first-round pick, an extra one, you got an extra one from the worst teams in the league, which almost never happens because teams never want to trade away a first-round pick when they think they're going to be one of the 5 worst teams in the league. So, like I said, chance to get 2 guys next year, I really like. So that was where they kind of started off. The trade back from 3 to 12, back up to 6 to get Paris Johnson. Now, a guy that a lot of people talked about as they felt like a really good value in the second round, B.J. Ujulari out of LSU, the defensive end, guy that got the 41st pick. Their overall 10th pick of the second round. A lot of people really liking him. A lot of people had him with a first-round grade.
Yes.
So that defense needs a lot of help. And so, pass rushers, pass protectors, and QBs is what everybody needs right now.
Well, you look at this, and they got Myjah Sanders and Cameron Thomas last year on that defensive end, right? You had J.J. Watt, of course, and you've been trying to kind of replace all of that. Zach Allen, I thought, was really good. I really wanted them to sign Zach Allen, but I think they understood that look, it's going to be 2 years before we're competitive again. Let's don't spend a lot of money on a guy that might help us win games when we want to lose right now, which is so weird to say. But I like Thomas. I like Sanders. I like what those kids showed the first season. They really started to come on late in the year, which you expect rookies to do. But then to add Ojulari, I think he is an athletic freak, right? I think he's a guy that, even as a second-round pick, I mean, you've got to have something out of that second-round pick. But he's almost, to me, like a sleeper in terms of, you just hope that you're going to get what you think you can get out of him. And I think down the road, when you start pairing him, I mean, the Cardinals are going to have a ton of money next year to help that defensive line, because this year it's not going to be very good. But I think Ojulari down the line could be a really good fit for this team. And I don't know what Isaiah Simmons is still. I still don't. And it's so weird. But I liked it. I mean, obviously I'd love to have Will Anderson, don't get me wrong, but I like the kid. I mean, he plays at LSU. He plays in big games every week in the SEC. So I like what I see out of him, and I think he can really help this team along with Thomas and Sanders. I think this is a good group of 1 and 2 year players that you can watch develop over the next 3 to 4 years, and hope that they turn into a pretty good tandem.
Yeah, this is where a pick, their third-round pick, I was really high on their third-round pick. It just feels like it works everything with them. They got Garrett Williams, defensive back, cornerback out of Syracuse, a guy I watched a ton at Syracuse, a guy that had end of first round talent. This was a deep cornerback class, so he kind of fell with the ACL injury. But I feel like it's a perfect time. You don't got to rush him back. Again, you're not trying to win a bunch of games next year. Let him take that value. Let him kind of roll down, the draft to the third round instead of first. Let him get healthy all year next year, and then hopefully, technically, he's like another first-round pick next year for you. So I thought that was great because he was getting all kinds of first-round looks until the ACL injury, and he played really well up to that point. So I thought getting him 9th pick of the third round, their first pick of 2 in the third round, I thought was a really smart move for them.
I agree, and I think you're slowly seeing the development of Marco Wilson. I mean, he's been on an island, unfortunately, obviously not with a lot of help. And I think if you continue to develop Marco Wilson, and then you can put a guy like Williams on the other side, I think that's big. And obviously you said it best with the injuries. He was hurt there in college, but Arizona's kind of that team right now where they're at, where they sit. Why not take a chance with something like that? I mean, I think they're going to have a lot of money next year, as mentioned, to go out and maybe hit the free agency market and kind of bring in guys they need to bring in. But I think it was a perfect job, again, by Monty to just say, you know what, this kid's suffered some injuries, but we've got time. We're not going to be a Super Bowl contender for the next 2 years. So we've got time to let him develop. Let's see what Marco does. Obviously, I love the idea with our safeties with Thompson and Buda Baker. I love that, keeping them. But it's one of those where you need help at cornerback. Everybody does, right? I mean, not many teams are flush with that, but the Cardinals definitely needed help with that. And I think I'm with you on this. I think as a third-round pick, as a guy that could have been early second, late first, to go out, even though with the injuries, I think it's worth taking a chance on. So I loved what the Cardinals did. Again, this was a great draft for Monty, and I just loved it. I thought he got depth at a lot of positions that we needed depth, and I thought he added a couple, 2 or 3 guys that could really help us in year 2 especially. I like what he did.
Yeah, the other third-round pick that they picked up, 31st in the third round, Michael Wilson, the wide receiver out of Stanford, a guy who was on a team that just wasn't that good. That kind of hurt his draft stock a little bit just because Stanford was not a good football team last year. But a guy that now you put him on this Cardinals team, and you're like, this guy's got a shot to get some playing time as a rookie. He's got a shot to kind of work his way up the depth chart, especially with him now releasing DeAndre Hopkins, and he's on the move. This is a wide open wide receiver core.
And I think you just nailed it with DeAndre Hopkins. I'm guessing that this management looked to the future and said, look, if we keep DeAndre, that's great, but why do we keep him? I mean, the goal this year, I mean, I cringe to even keep saying it, but the goal this year is just to lose. and a guy like DeAndre Hopkins is not going to help you lose games. He's going to help you win games. So I think that was a key part for Monty to look ahead. Now, he's not explosive, but they talk about how he runs really good routes. And I think that whole receiving core with Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown and crew, and Rondale Moore, I know we'll probably talk about him later, but this is a room that needs to get better in a hurry. And hopefully this kid is somebody that can, again, in year 2 or year 3, really help this squad. I know that's what the draft is about. I know teams that are contending would love to get a first-round pick that's going to help them win immediately. But I love the way Monty looked at this and just kind of said, you know what? I want guys that in year 2 or year 3 are going to help us win games. And I think these first 4 picks are right dead on where the Cardinals needed to go.
Yeah, then 4th round, they went and got John Gaines, an offensive lineman. Like I said,
yes,
at that point, you want to, at that point, you just want to go any kind of the big guys you can get, see if they can kind of fill in things. So, obviously taking a guy there is key. And then we get on to one of my personal favorites, 5th round, 4th pick of the 5th round, Clayton Tune, quarterback out of Houston. Guy just put together an unbelievable college career. I know he was ranked a little bit lower on some people's boards. I had him as high as QB4 in some of my rankings in this draft class. I really liked him. I just thought he had a lot of ability. We talk about this all the time. I am not a Will Levis guy, and I actually thought Clayton Tune was a much better player than Will Levis. He just showed it in college left and right. And Clayton Tune, his mom liked and retweeted me my tweets at the draft when I said QB1 for the Arizona Cardinals, Clayton Tune, when he got drafted when I was at the draft this year in Kansas City. So let's talk about this. We're going to get into a few more of these position battles and things, but let's talk about this. Clayton Tune, should they give him a shot? Should they give him a chance to start this year with Kyler being out at minimum the first half of the season?
100% yes. 100% yes. David Blau, look, serviceable guy, right? He came in last year. He threw for 300 one game. He got some yards done, for them. But, you and I, being Central Illinois guys, we saw him at Purdue. He was a decent quarterback. He's not anything that I projected my NFL team to be relying on to win games. Colt McCoy, look, the kid has had a great career. And, a couple of seasons ago when the Cardinals made the playoffs, he was big in a couple of games for Arizona, stepping in when Kyler Murray got hurt. So all due respect to Colt McCoy, don't get me wrong, and I'm guessing, unfortunately, they'll probably trot him out week 1. But, yeah, why not give Clayton Tune a shot? Now, you watch more college football than I do, obviously, especially on a more grand basis. I watch a lot of Big Ten. Obviously, I'm season ticket holder for Illinois, but I didn't see a lot of Clayton Tune. So when they drafted him, first of all, I loved his moxie. Right off the bat, I loved his moxie. He's like, look at my numbers. He's like, why am I not a first-round pick? And I love that, man. Now, listen, there's been other guys that have said that and it turned out to be nothing, let's say. But yeah. I love the moxie of him coming out saying, look at my numbers. I mean, prove to me that I can't be a quarterback in the NFL. So I'm excited. And again, if you're a Cardinals team and you're trying to figure out what you have in the future, you've got Kyler Murray, right? But Colt McCoy's not in your future. David Blau's not in your future. So go out and make Clayton Tune, make him a guy that you can give minutes to this season and that down the road can back up a guy like Kyler Murray. I love it. And who knows? We've seen this all the time with guys like Trent Green and go down the list of guys that were, Kurt Warner's the perfect example. I don't know that he's going to be that, but why not give him a shot? If his moxie's like it is, the numbers he put up at Houston were amazing. Give him a chance. You never know if he turns into a guy that all of a sudden you're like, hey, you're the next Gus Frerotte. A 6th-round pick that turns out to be a serviceable starter in the NFL. You don't know that you don't have that, so give him a chance. I mean, that would make me as a Cardinal fan want to watch games, Justin. I don't want to see Colt McCoy at quarterback. I'm sorry, Colt. I want to see a guy like Clayton Tune at quarterback and see what he's got. Now, if he's bad, if he's obviously not making the progressions and all of that, then go back to Colt and say, all right, you've got time here to get developed, but why not give him a chance and hope that you caught fire or you caught lightning in a bottle?
Yep, I agree with 100%. I mean, Colt McCoy, you know who he is. He's a really good backup. He's a guy that if someone gets hurt, he'll come in and he will help you either win that game or keep you in a game. Yep. But that's who he is. He's in his early 30s. I mean, it's not there for Colt McCoy. He got a chance to start plenty of times. It didn't work. Well, again, playing a whole season with Colt McCoy at QB for the Cardinals. Does he win you 2 or 3 more games than you should have? Maybe. I don't know. I just would rather say if I'm a Cardinals fan, knowing that this season's already probably likely a bust, right? I want to see Clayton Tune. I want to say, like, play the guy, see if he's got anything. And you know what? If he ends up having nothing, you're like, okay, well, we just wasted a 5th round pick like we always do on random players. You know what I mean? Like, that's what teams do all the time. Teams blow picks on late guys that they never play.
Doubt.
So I'm like,
no doubt.
The guy played, he played a lot of high level. I mean, he played at Houston. So again, he played in not as tough of a conference, but the guy put up unbelievable numbers, and he did it multiple seasons. So it's not like the guy started 1 year, 2 years. I mean, the guy was great at Houston. So to me, it's worth at least looking at him and giving him a chance. Maybe, like I said, maybe he doesn't come in day one as a starter, but man, if you're 0-3 or 0-4, a couple weeks in, do you not give him a shot, see what he does? That's my thing. And we were going to talk about this a little later, but, as we were going to finish up the draft here. But I'll talk about the 3 defensive guys, and we'll keep going with this.
Can I add something real quick?
Yep, jump right in.
It's interesting because when you say that, what's unique about this Cardinal season is what you just said. You're not going to be good, right? So there's a handful of teams right now in the NFL, the Chiefs, go down the list. The Chiefs, the Dolphins are going to be good. We know that Buffalo is going to be good. You go down that Eagles, obviously. Those teams, they know what they're going to be. So they know what they have to do, and they're not going to risk something on a rookie that they're not, maybe on a defensive end or maybe an offensive lineman or something that they hope to get something out of them. And then there's that big group of teams in the middle that are fighting for playoff spots that are sitting there saying to themselves, well, I don't know that I want to play a rookie at quarterback because we've got a chance to make the playoffs. It's so unique that Arizona, and listen, we've been in this spot a lot of times in my life, but it's unique that they have this ability to just say, we're not going to be good. So why not just throw out and see what you've got out of all these young guys? Because what do you have to lose, right? I mean, the best thing about it is they're not that great, and you've got the number 1 pick in the NFL draft next season.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll just knock out the last couple guys in the draft here. 5th round, their second 5th round pick was Owen Popo, linebacker. Actually, a pretty solid pick there. I think he has a shot to actually be on the 2 depth chart, maybe get some PT here for them. 6th round, Contrell Clark, defensive back, another guy just trying to add to the mix, see if he could possibly make the team. And then last pick of the 6th round, 36th in, Dante Stills, a defensive tackle. So they kind of try to bolster the defense down the end. Why we're talking about this, we were just kind of here, like you said, draft grade, if you had to throw a grade at it, kind of what would you do? A team trying to move down, trying to get extra picks, you always got to take that into consideration. But kind of maybe what would be your draft grade this year for the Cardinals?
I'm sorry to do this. I'm sorry to homer you, but I'm going an A- because number 1, you've got now Houston's number 1 pick next season, and you've got a chance to have 2 first-round picks next season. I know that shouldn't play into this draft, but to me it does. I mean, you went in and accomplished something that you're not going to be good, and Houston's not going to be very good. So all of a sudden next season, you've got a chance, first of all, to shed payroll this season, and then next season really jump in with 2 high draft picks. I like Ojulari. I think he's going to be a guy that could really help this out. And then, I'm sorry, but if Paris Johnson turns into be a 10-year offensive lineman, especially at left tackle in this league, then I think Monty Ossenfort did exactly what he needed to do. Again, I don't mean to homer this, and I promise there's been other drafts where I would immediately tell you it's a C-, it's a D, it's whatever. But I really like what Arizona did with the idea, again, with Kyler being hurt. And I hate that he's hurt, don't get me wrong. But that just basically tells you you're not going to have that good of a season. So let's adjust and let's use that as a strength to see what we can develop in the future. So I think they did a wonderful job with this draft. I really like what they did. I think they've got at least 3 guys that can be starters in the future. And I mean, you hope, right? You always hope, cross your fingers and hope that happens. But I again hate to be a homer, but I think it's an A- for the Cardinals. I think they did a heck of a job.
I actually got to agree with you. I definitely think you could give them an A- B+ range here with this draft. Just knowing the way the history of everything going, the fact that not only did you trade for a first round pick, but a likely top 5 first round pick, to me that also helps out big time for next year. They didn't have a ton of picks in great spots, but I like the guys they got. All the guys they got kind of made sense for them. So I'm kind of with you for a team that's not in a great spot right now overall. I actually thought this draft was pretty solid for them, and at least is giving them a chance to kind of build for the future. Like you said, who knows once those 2 first round picks next year turn into, and then Paris Johnson, like you said. If he's a 10-year Pro Bowler, Aguilari becomes a really good defensive end. I mean, you come back and look at this draft and like, hey, this is the place where they started turning it all around. So I definitely agree with you on that. Now let's just get into the Kyler talk here, because this is obviously the big thing here for the Cardinals. Everybody's talking about this offseason. Is what do you do with Kyler Murray? He was obviously Cliff Kingsbury's guy. There's been, talk about, does Kyler care about football enough? Does he, work hard enough? Does he do this? Now he has the injury. Now, it's starting to be like, oh, does he get injured too often? Is he too small? All these things are coming up after you gave him the huge contract. Is this team prepared to completely reset and try to figure out how to get rid of Kyler Murray and completely reset if they get the number 1 pick next year and get Caleb Williams? Or does this team say, hey, we really do believe in Kyler, we're going to let him get fully healthy, and we're hoping that all these other picks we're making around him are going to be super solid picks that we can turn into more picks that we can kind of rebuild this whole team because we've already paid the money to him. Let's get a bunch of cheaper other guys as opposed to, everybody talks about the cheap quarterback. You got to have that rookie quarterback. I could see this team going both ways. The biggest thing I hear from everyone is like, how are they going to get rid of that contract? There's no way anybody's going to trade for that contract. And I think what it's going to come down, you could trade him. It's just you're going to have to eat some of it, and you're probably not going to get hardly anything in return. I mean, you're looking at late draft picks. I mean, the best you could maybe hope for would be a third, maybe a third and a fifth, because of all that salary. So that's the interesting thing to me that really – I want to see what plays out for the Cardinals over the next year, because that, to me, is going to be a super interesting situation.
I'm hyping this up way too much, but I think it's one of the top 5 stories in the NFL next draft season, because I understand, like, it's hard. Like, I'm not a Kyler guy, and I hate to say that, but even the idea that, and here's a small example of what I mean. All of a sudden, you got a new regime, right? You've got Monty, you've got, a new coach, et cetera. And it's one of those where it's like, well, now I'm going to be friends with the coaches because they came down to Oklahoma and they saw me get a statue dedicated for myself. Well, you know what, Kyler? I've watched you now for 3 seasons. I've watched everything about it. The idea that they had to throw it in a contract, and I don't know if that's Steve Keim, I don't know if that's Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know what they're doing there. I don't know what that accomplished. But the idea that they throw this in that, well, there's a clause in here that he has to study film so many hours a day and so many hours a week. I mean, this has been an absolute misery since he got here. Now, has he produced a lot of great moments? Yes. Has he consistently produced it? Justin, I watch a lot of Cardinals games, more than anybody should watch, right? I watch every minute of every game. Can he make the spectacular play? Yes, there's no doubt about it. You've seen it 100 times. Can he miss, though, a guy across the middle on an 8-yard pass that's going to get you a first down on 3rd and 6 all the time? And that's the thing that worries me, right? And look, you look at an NFL, you look at a guy that is now blown out a knee, and what's one of his strengths? Running the football. So all of a sudden I'm looking at this as maybe that somebody that's not as smart as a GM in the NFL, but I'm sitting there saying, okay, one of Kyler Murray's strengths is the idea that he can run the football, but he just blew a knee out. So is that good? No, I mean, obviously, with what we've got today, you can come back even stronger. We think about that with pitchers that have, the surgery and come back even stronger. But I don't know. I've not liked what I've seen out of him. The idea that you've got guys even in year 3 coming out, offensive linemen coming out saying, look, Kyler's just got to grow up. I think when he does, blah, blah, blah. I just don't like it. I look around the league and I see guys like Patrick Mahomes and I see Josh Allen, and I see guys like that have just immediately dominated, and there's zero off the field issues. And yet with Kyler, there's issues all the way. And why would he be like that when you've got a guy like Cliff Kingsbury that absolutely loved him? And the Cardinals had drafted a quarterback the year before, and then all of a sudden said, you know what? We're getting rid of Josh Rosen. We're making you our number one guy. You would think Kyler Murray would come into that organization saying, I am 100% dedicated to you. Here I am. Let's go. And it just seems like day one, there's been issue after issue after issue. And that doesn't even include the idea, like I said, on third and 6, he's overthrowing a guy 8 yards down the field. So I hate it, but you're already so deep into this that if you can find somebody to take that contract and start over with the team that is still I think at least 2 years away from being competitive, why not start over if you can get a guy like Williams out of USC? I don't know that that's the popular. I'm on Arizona Cardinal, chats all the time. I don't ever get on there and chat, but I'm reading them all. There is half this fan base that loves Kyler Murray, and there's half this fan base that can't wait to see him gone. And unfortunately, I'm in the half that can't wait to see him gone. I apologize, but if you can get Caleb Williams next year with that number 1 pick and somehow get something out of Kyler and get rid of that. The other thing I told you before we started this is the Cardinals are going to have a ton of salary cap next season. So I don't know how it works. I've never been, financially, I'm not that great of a guy in terms of reading the cap and how it works. But I think the Cardinals could eat a lot of Kyler's contract next season, at least, to make it a little bit more, of one of those where a team might look at that and say, well, this might be worth the chance. And we know, Justin, you know this more than I do. You follow the NFL heavier than me, but it's all about quarterbacks. And while you've got something in Kyler Murray, don't get me wrong, there's going to be another team out there that's in love with Kyler Murray. And a team that's this close to winning the Super Bowl, I think somebody will actually take the chance and go after Kyler, and I think it'd be the best thing for the Cardinals.
Yeah,
if you can get Caleb Williams.
yeah. Again, it comes down to draft pick. Can you get him? Yep. Is he the guy that you get? I agree with you on that because I think, I think Kyler is a good quarterback. I think he's an above average quarterback.
Yes.
The issue you get in the NFL is once a team's lost trust in a guy and they don't seem like they do trust him, that just makes things so much more difficult in the locker room. It makes things so much more difficult everywhere around your organization. And it just feels like this is a team that doesn't trust Kyler. Like the coaching staff, they just went and, it doesn't bode well when the guys that all had your back are all the guys that just got fired. So, that's a problem. When everybody that was loved you and pushed hard for you, when everybody said you can't draft a 5'10", 200-pound quarterback, and they're like, no, he's the man. Right. We think he's awesome, and all those guys are gone. Oh, yep. That would make me nervous. And if I'm a new regime, looking at what happened to the last group that put all their eggs in the Kyler basket, I don't know if I'm not pushing everything I can to get rid of them. Well, good or bad. And it might end up blowing up in your face. But it's like I just think I can see these guys going, hey, we got to start new. We got to get this guy out of here. We got to get a new feeling. But you know how it is with everybody else. Just like that guy, look at the girl, but he's like, oh, I can fix her. I'm better. Oh, I can do it. These GMs are looking. I'm like, oh, Kyler wouldn't act like that with me. He'd be great with me. He listened to everything our coaches say. He just doesn't like that guy. You know what I mean? So there's definitely teams that would take him and be like, oh, we can do better. We can make it work. And so I agree with you. That's the one thing I've heard people just like, I just don't think we could trade him. I don't think there's any way they can get rid of him. But I think there's a market. If Carson Wentz can get traded 2 or 3 times, Kyler Murray can get traded a couple times. You know what I'm saying? People can give him at least a chance. So I definitely don't think that's out the window. And like I said, like you've mentioned, the cap space, if they can eat it for a year or two while they have all these young contracts, they're building the team and they're like, hey, year 3, we're not paying anything for Kyler. He's on you. And then you have that money to sign other guys. I think that's, possibly the move to go. That's the thing is he going to get back and is he going to push to play? If he gets back in the season, is he going to push to not play? Going, hey, at this point, screw it. This team's terrible. Trade me. That's going to be something for the Cardinals that I think is going to come up this year is what's going to happen. Is Kyler healthy? Is he not healthy? Does he want to play? Does he, if you're 1-7, 1-8 mid-year, now he gets cleared by the medical staff, are you like, okay,
Right.
like we're just hurting ourselves if we play them.
Right.
So that's going to be a big question. But a lot of those guys, they got bonuses, they get all kinds of stuff in their contract. They want to play and they get out there, and you don't know. Maybe he does say like, I'm going to Lamar Jackson in. I just don't think I'm healthy enough this year. There's no reason for me to go. Find out. At least Lamar Jackson had a shot. Their team was in the playoffs.
Right,
I mean,
right,
if your team is like completely out of it, I just don't understand, where you're going to go from there. So obviously, I think it's going to be a story all off season here with the Cardinals. I think it's going to be something everybody pays attention to. Now, we'll talk a little fantasy impact here. Obviously, no Murray. We have some wide receivers here that are playable guys. Some guys that I like as sleepers. The question is, are these guys going to tank in value with no Kyler Murray? And if it is Colt McCoy or Tune, and Tune doesn't play well and McCoy doesn't play well, I'm seeing the values of these guys going all over the place in drafts, in mock drafts, and startup drafts. Because, I've seen people be like, hey, everyone's way too low on him. When he was healthy last year, his stats were great.
Sure.
You got to take him. You got to jump on him now because he's cheaper than he was 2 years ago. But you're like, if Colt McCoy starts all season, and he actually has some solid numbers with Colt McCoy, so don't get me wrong there.
He did.
But it's is that a guy you're like, okay, I want to make that guy my number 1 or number 2 wideout on my fantasy team if I know Colt McCoy's thrown to him all year. So that one makes it tough. And then on top of that, a guy that I have a ton of friends that are big Rondale Moore guys. They are just waiting for the Rondale Moore breakout. They're like, they can't help it. They're keeping him. They won't trade him. They won't drop him. They're like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So I know people were thinking that this was the year. And now they're like, is this really the year? Is Rondale really in trouble now? So that's another guy who I would have liked coming into the year especially with no DeAndre Hopkins. You think he's their number 2 guy?
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with him. Are you taking either one of those guys in a fantasy draft?
I don't think so. Look, listen. Maybe I downplayed myself a little bit with my idea that I don't like check into the NFL as much as you, but I know when it comes to fantasy, I'm not even close to somebody like you. So I'm definitely going to lean on you for an answer like this. Can I go backwards real quick and then to go forward? Gannon, the head coach, for those that are sitting there, if you're a Cardinal fan and you're like, well, Gannon from day one has really shown his love for Kyler Murray. He did that with DeAndre Hopkins too, and see what happened, right? That's all I'm going to say about that. So don't fall into the trap of, wow, I really feel like they like Kyler Murray, and I don't think they want him going anywhere. I wouldn't fall into that trap. Now, fast forward to the fantasy. If Rondale Moore could stay healthy, my goodness, that kid, we watched him again, at Purdue, obviously against Illinois, and he is so talented. It's just, can you stay healthy? I think this is a big year for Marquise Brown. He's in the final year of that rookie contract, but the bad news is he's got Colt McCoy throwing to him, or maybe Clayton Tune, and I feel bad for him a little bit. But let me go back one more step. When it comes to playing Kyler, you had mentioned that. Kyler has shown to me, when it comes to this attitude thing, right, that is a big thing to me. When it comes to this, when things go wrong, Kyler immediately pouts, right? He's the guy on the side. He and DeAndre Hopkins got into more shouting matches than anybody, right? And Hopkins will tell you that. He's like, look, that was out of respect for my guy, right? I was trying to get him better, et cetera. I love Kyler, et cetera. But you would see Kyler pout. Well, would you throw Kyler Murray into a game when you're 1-8? He's not going to be happy about that, right? So to me, it's a no-brainer that, you know what, Kyler, maybe near the end of the season we throw you in and let you get a little bit better, unless he surprises the heck out of us and he's ready for opening day, which would shock the heck out of me. And I would give him a lot of credit if he was, because that means he really went to work on that. Now, to the fantasy part, that's the thing that scares me, and you know this better than I do. When I go in a fantasy draft and I look at wide receivers, there are a list of maybe 8 to 10 that are no-brainers. They are the ones that this guy's going to catch this many passes, blah, blah, blah. I don't care who's throwing to him. That guy's going to have a great year. But then you get to the next level and you're like, okay, who's his quarterback? And that's the thing to me when I try to do an NFL fantasy draft, and listen, I'm not perfect at it, obviously, but when I get to a draft and I'm going for either my second wide receiver or down the line, even a third guy, I'm looking at that going, okay, who's throwing to this guy? Well, I'd rather have a questionable number 2 guy or 3 guy that Josh Allen's throwing to than a questionable 2 or 3, which I would put Rondale Moore at, that Clayton Tune's throwing to. Now, maybe Clayton Tune turns out to be the best quarterback ever, and I'll meet you back here. I'll meet you back at your brewery, and we'll have some fun with that. But it's one of those where it's like, I don't know that I would. I think you have to look at all sides of that, as you know. So I hate to say this, but I don't think I'd be high on Marquise Brown, even though he's in a contract year and needs to prove himself. And even though he's the number 1 guy, I don't know that I'd be happy or that big on Rondale Moore, just because I can't, until he shows me he's healthy for a year, I can't trust him. The one guy I do like is Greg Dortch. I mean, you could get him late, right, in drafts. And all he's done since he's been with the Cardinals is go out and catch a lot of passes. He's basically Rondale Moore, and he's taken advantage of Moore being hurt. But Greg Dortch is one heck of a receiver. I think he's a kid that one day will be either on a Cardinal team that's good or another team that sees his ability and can really utilize him. Maybe that's my hot take of the day. I think Dortch is a kid that one day, 3 or 4 years down the road, is going to help a team win a Super Bowl, and you're going to be like, where did Greg Dortch come from? Well, he was with the Cardinals for 3 or 4 years. So I really like, in terms of the receivers in fantasy, I hate to do it, but I just would stay away.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm kind of out on these guys. I think you're right. Dortch is a guy that if I'm going waiting late and he's just sitting there late in my draft, I think he's worth a flyer on. I absolutely do think that. And the one guy I'm probably going to have on more teams than not is James Conner. And that's only because he's falling so deep in these drafts because everyone's like, well, they're going to get crushed. They're going to be throwing the ball. They're going to be behind all the time. But James Conner is fairly efficient. And if he gets some of these guys are going to drop the ball off to him out of the backfield, and all of a sudden you're getting James Conner with 6, 7, 8 catches a game because they're like, they don't know who else to throw to. I kind of like James Conner. Again, I wouldn't be taking him high in my draft, but if he's one of those guys that's dropping because he's a veteran on a bad team, you could do worse than having him as a flex play or an outside RB2 because he has been injury concerns in his career, but he has been fairly healthy the last couple of years, only missed a game or 2 a season. So he's probably my buy on the Cardinals if you get him at the right price.
I like this as much as I like the JT Brew hat. I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, I think James Conner, it was funny when you had asked me to come on and do this. I said, well, I know the one guy I'm really going to target. There's a tight end that I kind of like, but there's one guy I'm going to target on this team that I think is going to get you points, and that's James Conner. Because, yes, are they going to be behind a lot? Yes. Are they going to be able to throw a lot? Yes. But I think the Cardinals understand that if we're going to be in games, we've got to use the running game. And who else are you going to go with? Keontae Ingram? I mean, he showed a little bit of a flash last year, I understand, but, you going with him, you going with Corey Clement. I mean, it's James Conner until James Conner wants out of a game. And I think how many times, and you know this, again, when it comes to fantasy, you're 10 times, 100 times better than me. There are so many split backfields now in the NFL that it's hard. I mean, if you're lucky enough to get one of those 5, 6, 7, 8 running backs that maybe is going to get the big share, James Conner's going to get that. And like you said, he's stayed healthy. Now, could he get hurt week 2 and then we look like idiots? Sure. And is there a little bit of Steeler bias here with Justin Taylor? Heck yeah. No, I'm kidding. But listen, he's a power running back. He's going to, if you're the Cardinals trying to win a game this year, what are you doing? You're trying to eat clock, right? And I know this sounds like a college thing. Hell, this sounds like a high school thing I'm talking about. And, you're not going to eat clock in the NFL and win a game very often, but why wouldn't you give him the ball in first and second, hope he can go for 3.5 yards each time and set up a short third down to where you can pick up a first down because you're going to have a quarterback that is not going to just sit there and roll around like Kyler can. I think you are dead on with James Conner. I think he's a guy that, maybe not your first pick at running back, but if you like your first pick at running back and you've got a solid wide receiver and you like your tight end, which is an important part of the NFL, why not go James Conner as your second back? He's going to get you 20, 25 carries a game. and rack up 70 to 100. I think he's going to be the guy the Cardinals lean on. Zach Ertz is hurt. Don't forget that. I don't know that he's going to be ready for week 1. You don't have a quarterback, I don't think, that's really going to be that impressive in terms of getting Marquise, Hollywood, and Rondale the ball. Why not go James Conner? Somebody's got to move the ball for the Cardinals, and I think Conner's perfect. I think you nailed that.
Yeah, let's talk about, a guy that me and you both like a ton is second-year tight end Trey McBride out of Colorado State, a guy who didn't get a lot of play last year. And let's be honest, most teams we talk about is, typically there's a 3-year window for tight ends to kind of really before they hit in the NFL. He's going to have every opportunity this year with Zach Ertz still recovering from that late injury he had. Redraft, I'm taking him as a late flyer as my second tight end. But if I'm in a dynasty league or a startup right now, I'm looking at Trey McBride because he is, he's down a little bit. People are on Greg Dolch because he played a little bit more. They've got some of these other rookie tight ends last year played a little bit more. He did. Everybody really liked this rookie class. I'm seeing McBride kind of fall way behind a lot of those guys, and I like McBride as much, if not more, than every one of those guys. And so right now is the buy season for Trey McBride. There's a lot of leagues where you could probably get him cheap. You could trade for him because somebody else went and got a rookie tight end they're all excited about, and you could maybe get McBride from someone. So he's definitely a guy that I'm targeting if I'm in any kind of startup league where I'm like going, hey, I'm going to take 2 young tight ends because I missed out on Kelsey. I missed out on Andrews, whatever. I want to take some young tight ends. I'm taking a shot on Pat Freiermuth from the Steelers. I'm taking a shot on Jelani Woods from the Colts, McBride. I'm taking a couple of these younger guys and say, hey, let me stack them together and see if I'm going to hit. But I like McBride's a guy. I just think, he's got that upside. If you get these, kind of like a little bit with Connor, if these guys are getting just rushed like crazy and they can't get rid of the ball, I can see McBride just dump off all day long and him actually having a good year, especially because, again, he's got to play early. Ertz is not going to be ready at the start of the year.
No.
And people forget, Ertz is in his early to mid-30s now, so it's not like he's a 24-year-old guy coming off a major injury. He's a little bit older of a player. So I just think, I think McBride's a guy, in an offense I don't like we just talked about it. I don't really like anybody on this offense other than Connor, but McBride would be the other guy that I'd be looking to acquire if I can, just because I think the cost is right now. People don't like the Cardinals. They think the offense is going to be bad. He's kind of getting overshadowed by a bunch of other young guys. He's just so much cheaper to get this year than he was last year.
I don't know what else I would add to that. You just nailed that. And really the point that I was going to add until you nailed it is the idea that how many times are the Cardinals quarterbacks like Colt McCoy or if you go with Clayton Tune, the rookie, how many times are they just going to be like, who's open? And Trey McBride is athletic enough to get open. He can beat a linebacker to a spot, right? Zach, I love Zach Ertz. Right? When the Cardinals traded for him, I was all in for that. I've always respected him, and I think he's a great locker room guy. He's a great guy. I think he's working his tail off to get back, and I think he will get back for this team. But I think the Cardinals are going to utilize 2 tight ends even if he's back. I think this is great. And, Trey McBride he was a second-round draft pick, which shocked some people, and then he wasn't even on the active list week 1. And you're sitting there going, what are we doing? Here come the Cardinals doing an idiot thing. And then by the end of the year, and of course, don't get me wrong, he was forced into it with Ertz being injured. But by the end of this season, he was looked at as a guy that was a pretty potent target for Kyler Murray and this team and Colt McCoy, et cetera, down the stretch. So I look at it like this. He kind of came in as a second-round pick, and the Cardinals, whether they wanted to or not, basically said, you're not good enough week 1, and you're not even on the active roster week 1. You need to work harder. And I think Trey McBride said, you know what? I'm going to work harder. He put up great numbers at Colorado State. And he's an athletic dude. And by the end of the year, not only was he running the right routes, but he was also catching some tough passes, right? Making some great catches. So I'm with you 100%. Is he your elite number 1 tight end? No. Is he your number 2 in terms of you're taking him in the 3rd or 4th round? Maybe not, because of the offense, because of the team in general. But I think Trey McBride is a guy that is going to put up some numbers. And like you said, now, a league I've never done. I've never done a buy league, right? I've never done all that. But if you're in a league like that, you're going to get him pretty cheap. and I think it's perfect. You nailed that with Trey McBride. Listen to that. We're excited about James Conner and Trey McBride.
Absolutely, the two guys you want if you're getting a Cardinals guy this year. Now, here's another thing that we'll go over briefly here is the defense.
Yes.
They went. It looked like they were really trying to build this defense the last couple of years, and it looked like they had a lot of pieces, and they just never could put it together. I mean, you got Zaven Collins, who I like at linebacker. He seemed kind of out of place, but he actually played a little bit better last year. Buda Baker is now like, I want out. This place is terrible. Like, we're gonna tank, so I want out there. I like Isaiah Simmons a bunch, and they have no idea what they're doing with him. And I thought when they drafted him, they had like some kind of game plan. Like, hey, this guy's like kind of a smaller outside linebacker. He's kind of a strong safety.
Yep.
Like, he can play all over the place. I thought they'd use him more like a Troy Polamalu style, like have him just like running all over the field, blitzing half the time, dropping into coverage half the time. And it's like they just couldn't figure out how they wanted to use him. They originally tried to make him a straight linebacker.
Yeah.
And didn't have a ton of success that.
No.
Did last year, they kind of moved him back to safety. Now this year, they've got him listed as nickelback in their lineup here. So he's going to play the nickel, which makes him one of the biggest nickel corners in the entire league. Now, it's crazy. So again, if they're going to use him in kind of a hybrid position, I can understand that. But this is another guy, like his fifth-year option's coming up, they're going to have to sign him or do something.
Him, right?
Yeah, they didn't offer him the fifth year. That's what I'm saying. So now, if I'm looking at them and I'm like, we didn't offer the fifth year Isaiah Simmons, do we trade him? Do you go out and just trade him this year and be like, hey, can we get a third for him? Because we're going to end up not re-signing him anyway because we don't want to give him a big contract. And that's what I think if you're the Cardinals, this is where you need to be evaluating everything. Do we trade Buda Baker? Do we take Isaiah Simmons and we trade him for a third or an early fourth? And again, you're probably not going to get the return you want. But hey, stack up 3 or 4 third-round picks. Stack up a couple late second, early fourth-round picks. At this point, you're not going to be good unless just
Clayton Toombs,
everything in the world turns upside down. I just don't understand how this team's going to be good. But it just they have a ton of holes. So it's like, hey, just keep getting younger guys, and if you can get that young base, like you said, they're going to have a ton of cap room. Where if they can figure out the QB situation, they get under. Now you go out and you signed or trade like they did before when they traded Houston for DeAndre Hopkins. Now you can go out and get one of those other guys from somebody else. But just sitting on these guys like an Isaiah Simmons that isn't working out, you decided, okay, we're not paying him that. You're just going to let him walk? I would look to see if I could move him to a team that has a system that fits better for him and see if you get anything from him. And I guess that's me. If I feel like I'm a fantasy owner that's bottoming out, and I'm like, sell. What do you give me? What do you give me? I'll take it. It maybe not be as much as I want, but at this point, I got to do something. I got to make some moves. I feel like that's where the Cardinals got to be at right now.
I'm at this point, if I'm a Cardinals fan and you've got so much to do, look and see what your strength is. What is the strength of your team that you think could still be a strength in 3 or 4 years? It's safety. It's Buda Baker and it's Jalen Thompson. I'm giving every amount of money I have to Buda Baker and Jalen Thompson to stay on this team. I've loved Jalen since he came in this league. Buda Baker is the leader of this team. And that was the importance of keeping him. So I get what you're saying in terms of if you can get rid of Buda and get a third-round pick. I don't want that. I want Buda Baker to be a Cardinal for life. I truly do, because I think he's the kind of guy that can help you transition from being bad to being good. And everybody on this team respects this kid. He looks like he's 130 pounds and he plays like he's 240. I mean, I love Buda Baker. Now, to Zaven Collins and Isaiah Simmons, those are 2 picks of Steve Keim that were linebacker picks 2 years in a row, I think. And the Cardinal fans are like, I mean, to this day, Justin, I don't know that you read Cardinal stuff like I do, but they're like, hey, I wonder, like last year, I wonder what linebacker Keim's going to take in the first round. They were basically dogging him like, here's the deal. I'm 100% with you on Isaiah Simmons, and I don't blame the Cardinals on that. He was a no-brainer coming out of college. The kid was, he, to this day, is just incredibly talented and a physical freak. But what can he do? Where do you fit him? And if you're the Cardinals, I think this year, maybe with a fresh new look at him, maybe going to a 4-3, a base 4-3 defense, maybe Maybe this is going to help him settle into a role. Maybe I think I just put him in a spot and just say, this is your spot for 16 games, and let's see how you do. And I'll be honest with you, on a team that, I like Micah Sanders, I like Cameron Thomas, I like Ojolari, don't get me wrong. But what's the thing that Isaiah Simmons is? He's a freak athletic. Put him on an end and give him one job. Your job is to rush the passer from the end. Quit playing him at safety. Quit acting like he can stop a running back. He just can't. He gets burned by tight ends all the time. If you're a fantasy guy and you're wondering if you should play a tight end against the Cardinals, yes, because Isaiah Simmons is covering that guy, and he's going to give up yardage left and right. And I think you can look at any magazine. You can listen to the Stew with JT Brew, and you're going to tell them, here's what's going to happen. Isaiah's going to give this up. So I would just put Isaiah Simmons on one end or the other and just say, rush the passer, try to get good at it, try to get as good as you can, and go from there.
So bringing it down to a close here, let's talk quickly about schedule. Obviously, we've talked this whole time about how we think they're going to be bad. Now the question is, how bad do you really think this Arizona Cardinals team is going to be? I'm looking through the schedule, and I'm fighting to find wins on the schedule. I really am. I think when we did my show earlier, when we talked about over-under wins, I think Vegas had them somewhere around 4.5. I felt like that was too high. I really think they're going to really hurt to get to 4 wins. I think, to me, honestly, I see this team winning 2 or 3 games, and it's going to be like just random luck because nothing works out well for them. Their home games are against really good teams. All their road games that they could be winnable games, you're talking about, they're not great winnable games. I mean, You got the Giants week 2 at home. Well, Giants in the past have not done well going to the West Coast, but you still don't feel like you can win that game. You're at Washington week 1. That would usually be maybe a game you could win, but I actually think Commanders are going to be better.
I do too.
You get the Bengals, that's a loss. Baltimore, that's a loss. Steelers, that's a loss. Browns, that's a loss. So, you're losing the AFC North. That's clear. And then the only other team, San Francisco is going to work you. That's happening. They're probably not beating the Seahawks. They somehow have the Eagles in there. It's like they're not going to beat the Eagles. They're not. They've got the NFC East. The NFC East tough. They're probably losing every NFC East game. So then it comes down to you're like, okay, well, what games can we win?
Texans.
Houston. They're at Houston. They don't even get it at home. So you're at Houston. In the week before that, you're at home against Atlanta, who's an up-and-coming team. So that's a game you should probably be in. But a lot of people are picking Atlanta to win that division. And then how good's LA going to be? I think they can beat Houston and split LA.
I agree.
Literally, that's where I'm at. I think they win 2 games. I really think this team wins 2 games. Especially if Tyler's healthy and in there, I could see him pulling out some magic and getting in some shootouts with Seattle and maybe winning a game against Seattle if they're healthy. But without Kyler Murray, I think this team to me is a 2-3 win team max. Unless somebody else just blows up and they have some crazy game where their defense scores 3 times and something crazy happens. But it feels like this. They feel like a bottom 3 team in the league to me, and that's why I'm saying so. You're a bottom 3 team, even if you're playing your hardest. Where do you got them? I know as a fan, it's hard for me on my teams to really be like, oh, I think they're going to be terrible. Even, the Colts this year, everybody's like, oh, Colts are going to be terrible. And I'm like, I think they can win 9 or 10. And people think I'm a lunatic. They're like, no way. But again, I'm also looking at their thing, and I'm like, man, their schedule's really easy, though. I was like, I could see them sneaking out some wins. I don't even see some sneak out wins here. And when the game I think is your most winnable game is on the road at the other team that I think is the worst team in the league. that's a problem. So
can we tie? Just to help.
You know what I might end up doing? I just actually thought about this for my JT Parlay play of the day segment. I might have to end up getting on there and posting a team going 0-16 or 0-17 actually with the added game. I might have to throw a little money down on somebody goes 0-17 this year because there's a handful of teams that are going to be really bad and they just don't play each other enough to win enough games. But I think this team is bottom 3 at best in the league.
It is amazing, first of all, that we've talked for an hour on the Arizona Cardinals. I'm just absolutely shocked that this has happened. But no, listen, I'm with you on this. I mean, you start the first 3 weeks against the NFC East, and 2 years ago, the NFC East was an absolute joke, right? We made fun of that league or that division, and it's like, good luck to a team that wins 8 games going to make the playoffs or 9 games. And now you look at that East, and it's like, that's pretty. I mean, obviously Philadelphia's unbelievable. Dallas has gotten better. Washington's gotten better, and of course the Giants, like you said, coming to Arizona. I think they're going to ground us into the ground on that one. But yeah, I mean, this is a terrible team. And the schedule, I think, is the 13th toughest in the NFL. So that doesn't help to have that anyway. And, obviously you're not beating the Bengals. You're not beating some of these teams, the Eagles, etc. So, I mean, this is a horrible team, Justin. It's just not going to be a good season. And the weird part about this is, like I told my son, who unfortunately is a Cardinals fan himself, I'm like, the weird part is that for the first time in a long time, I'm going to pull for the Cardinals to lose every weekend and the Houston Texans. And yeah, does that hurt? Yeah, that hurts me to say that. But I also understand what's on the other side of that rainbow, and that's the first pick in the NFL draft and maybe a second pick with the Texans. Now, the one thing I will tell you, especially if we're wrapping this up, the one game that I am going to pull for the Cardinals, and we are going to get it done, is we're going to whip the Steelers' ass. And I'm banking it right now. You're hearing it right now on the stew with JT Brew. Bet it all, bet big money that week. The Cardinals whip the Steelers' butt. Let's go.
The funny thing is, that would be a classic Steelers loss. It would be a classic Steelers loss. They love to do that, where they're in the mix. They're like one game out of the playoffs. They're probably like a half game. They're getting ready to go into the bye week, and they're like, oh, we're ready. They go at Arizona in the first week of December and just fall apart and lose that game. I mean, I'm telling you, I've been looking through the schedule. I'm like, what game am I going to get where I'm just going to lose my mind this year? And that would be the one. That would be the one where the Cardinals just somehow miraculously Clayton Tune starts. And then I'm torn because I'm like, I want Clayton Tune to do well because he's my guy I've been talking about all year. And Clayton Tune throws for 330 and 4 touchdowns. And I'm like, damn it.
As you know, my son lives out in Arizona. I'm banking it right now. I'm making that trip to Arizona. We're going to Glendale. I'm going to be at that game because there's a no-lose situation. If we lose to the Steelers, whatever, that's better for our draft pick. But if we beat you guys, it's my redemption for 2009 Super Bowl, baby. I'm gonna strip naked and run around Glendale. Actually, I'm not. Believe me, I'm not going to do that.
I can't even. I already gonna have to prepare myself for the text. But no, what we were talking about, it reminds me of the year that Peyton Manning was hurt in the Colts, and I went to every game and I rooted against the Colts. And people were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "I'm thinking long term, baby. I want Andrew Luck. I want Andrew Luck. Yep. I'm going to take the Curtis Painter losses. Do not win games, Curtis Painter.
Curtis Painter, I forgot about that.
Almost still one of the worst days of my life. Last game of the season, he put together a fourth quarter drive with like 2 minutes left, an 80-yard drive. They got down to the 10-yard line and went for it. And luckily threw an incomplete pass in the back of the end zone on 4th down, or they would have beat the Carolina Panthers and not got the number 1 pick. I mean, I was screaming in the stands. No, it's like, what are you doing? It was insane. It was insane. But luckily, I could tell that story without crying because it didn't happen.
Right.
I mean, if I did, I probably wouldn't even be able to talk about it. I'd have to go to therapy. But it's like, so bad. But I know how you feel. At least, see, the thing is, at least if you're out of it and you're going for the number 1 pick, to me, I'm like, okay, I can root for that all year. I can root for us to make moves, to get worse, or to get players that are on good contracts.
Yep. And
then I feel like we go in somewhere. The worst is to be in that middle ground where you're like, we're bad and we have no plan, and what are we going to do? At least they have a QB in Kyler. Now, is he the future or not? At least they got somebody. So at least if I'm, you got new people. For Cardinals fans out there, I just hope for you that the new regime has some kind of plan in place and puts it together and it works for you.
I'm going to try to trust him, right? And I do want to – I'll end it with this. I know I was dogging Kyler Murray, and don't get me wrong. I mean, Kyler is one heck of a quarterback. There's a lot of NFL teams that would love to have Kyler Murray. So if it ends up that the Cardinals, are making him the future, then I'm going to back him, right? I'm going to get behind him, and you could have a worse quarterback in the NFL. There's no doubt about it. You could have a worse quarterback than Kyler Murray. It's just what I've seen so far. It just is frustrating to me, and yeah, I hope we have the same success that the Colts did in terms of getting Andrew Luck. But then I hope Caleb Williams, if we end up getting him, doesn't leave after 4 years because he's the most brilliant guy in the world and he wants to go like architect himself out of LA, and just build a brand new city or something, because Andrew Luck's the smartest guy that's ever come out of college football. And he finally just said, I'm too smart to be getting beat around like this. I'm done. But no, listen, if I got to back Kyler, I'm going to back him. I'm not going to root for the Cardinals to win games this year because I know what's on the other side. But starting next year, I'm going to be really, really excited about this organization going forward. And I think if you had me back on in 2 or 3 years to do this, I think we're going to be talking about a Cardinals team that is going to be a legit playoff contender. I really do. I really feel that.
Well, Lon, I appreciate you coming on here and us talking Arizona Cardinals football. I mean, at least we had some stuff to talk about. You're a team that's not going to be very good.
No.
Let everybody know where they can find you on the socials and everything else about you, where they can check in, find the radio show, which I love to tune in every afternoon for that.
Thank you, buddy.
Let everybody know where they can find that stuff.
It means a lot to me for you to say something like that. On Twitter, @Lante, ESPNCU, and then Stevie J, which is Stevie JAY.com is where you can podcast, listen live to our show if you're not local here in the Champaign-Urbana area. We cover a lot of Illini. We cover a lot of Cardinals, Cubs, Blackhawks, Bears, Colts. We used to do the Rams when they were in St. Louis, but that's no longer. Blues, all of that stuff. So, but a lot of local Big Ten stuff. So if you're out there and you're an alum of a Big Ten school, or you're somewhere that want to hear more about Illinois, we're definitely the radio station for you. So we do 3 to 5 every day, Central Time, 3 to 5. But we have a lot of fun. I hope people can tell I have a lot of fun. I'm too old now to watch SportsCenter 100 times and learn everything about the second place goalie for the Boston Bruins. I just don't know that anymore. So, but I do know a lot about my Arizona Cardinals, my St. Louis Cardinals, my Fighting Illini. And so I think the show's pretty fun. And the next thing you know, you'll hear about Gilligan's Island on our show. So, you just never know. You never know what you're going to hear on our show. But I appreciate it, Justin. I mean, to have me on like this, talk about Arizona Cardinals for an hour this is the best thing I could ever do. This has been heaven, and I respect you 100% in terms of doing this. I'm excited for you. I know you're going to be on our show this Friday, so I'm excited about that. But thank you again. Thank you again for having me. It's been fun.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. Check that out. I check in on all kinds of radio apps that you can get on your phone. I jump on those and listen to the show. If I'm not in my car, I put it on the radio. But if I'm at home working on stuff around the house, I just pop it on my phone, listen to the show live all the time. So like I said, you guys can jump in, do that. I have a ton of friends that grew up here, a ton of Illini friends that always listen to the show when they're out of town. So they always tell me about that. So definitely check that out. Again, thanks, Lon, for coming on. You can find me at JT Orange on Twitter. Hit me up about just about anything on there. I talk fantasy, football, NFL, gambling, a little bit of everything. You can find all my articles on DFL, Daily League Football. You can do Dynasty League Football out there. I've got all kinds of IDP stuff coming out in the next few weeks, so check me out there. And then make sure to go to our Dynasty Pros football page, website. Site's getting updated here recently. You're going to have all kinds of new content on there. And then also on our webpage, our YouTube page, where you can check out this show. We have an IDP show. We have a Devi show that we do, and quite a few other things. So go ahead, jump on there, subscribe to that channel so you can get an update when we go on here. And you can jump on and hear the rest of our series as I keep having special guests on to kind of go over everything in the NFL here in the offseason. So once again, I want to thank Lante for joining me. I'm Justin Taylor. Thanks for checking us out. May all your draft picks hit and the trading never quit. See you guys next time.
You up on trades and why you move. You ain't designed to lose. Find you jumping over seemingly nothing. Racking up points makes the game a little more fun to watch. Can drop release. We started with the mock draft and now we making a mock.